Oh, she's sweet but a psycho, a little bit psycho. At night she's screaming, I'm out of my mind. Grab a cop gun, kind of crazy. She's poison but she's tasty. Yeah, people say run, don't walk away. These are the lyrics to the song Sweet But Psycho by Ava Max, released in 2020. The first time I heard my then 10-year-old singing these lyrics, I was mortified and a little offended. Since Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho was released in 1960, Hollywood, one of the largest sources of entertainment, has had the tendency to romanticize or demonize mental illness. For most people, information we see online, on television, or through print may be automatically assumed to be true. Depiction of mental illness in film and television portray characters with mental illness as violent, aggressive, childlike, homicidal, and unpredictable. Some different portrayals of mental illness are that aggressive and dangerous homicidal maniac, the eccentric and rebellious free spirit, the nymphomaniac who's powerfully seductive female, the overprivileged narcissist, the dehumanized crazy person, the irrational and confused simpleton character often used in comic ways, and the failure or victim who is unresponsive to treatment, unskilled, and unable to contribute to society. The characters are referred to with disparaging terms like crazy, loony, nuts, psycho, freak. Some are even used as comic relief, which trivializes their illness like it's a joke. Negative portrayals can cause harmful stereotypes, spread misinformation, and keep people who need it from seeking it. These stigmas and stereotypes portrayed in entertainment serve to harm and diminish the struggles and lives of real people suffering from mental illness and butcher the public's understanding of what they look like, which is why it's important to start a bigger conversation about the harmful depiction of mental illness in film and television. One of the most harmful stereotypes of mentally ill people in film is that people with mental illness are violent. According to NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, only 4% of violent acts in the U.S. are attributed to mental illness, and the Canadian Mental Health Association states people with major mental illness are 2.5 times more likely to be the victim of a violent crime than the perpetrator. In the movie Split, James McAvoy portrays a character with dissociative identity disorder, or DID, who has 24 personalities. The character kidnaps and imprisons 3 teenage girls in an isolated underground facility with the intent to feed them to the beast. The film is not an accurate portrayal of someone with DID. DID is a disorder that forms when someone is trying to escape reality, often because they're experienced a trauma situation, such as abuse. As a result, the people with DID shift between separate identities they form inside themselves to escape the trauma. These personalities may have names, traits, mannerisms, and distinctive voices. When the person switches between personas, they experience memory gaps. For a personality to emerge, there must be a trigger. The other personality cannot decide it wants to take over like it's depicted in the film. The film stigmatizes the disorder and could potentially have a negative impact on people who suffer from the condition. In the movie Joker, Joaquin Phoenix is depicted as having some kind of severe mental illness that triggers a series of violent acts after he is cut off from receiving antipsychotic medications due to budget cuts. One of the more toxic ideas in Joker is the association between serious mental illness and extreme violence. The idea that mental deterioration necessarily leads to violence against others, implied by the portrayal of Phoenix's character Arthur, stopping his medication with his increasingly frequent acts of violence, is not only misinformed, but further amplifies stigma and fear. In American Horror Story, Tate Langdon is a sociopath who shoots up the school in skull makeup and slicked back hair. The writers of the series depicted the condition as something poetic and tragically beautiful for aesthetic purposes. American Horror Story's depiction of mental illness makes them into something enchanting and convinces viewers, especially young ones, that there's some kind of misunderstood beauty in being toxic and damaged. The show continues to have a following of young teenagers obsessed with Langdon on social media years after the first season ended. Another example of a show romanticizing mental illness is the controversial Netflix original 13 Reasons Why, about a young girl who sent out cassette tapes before committing suicide and blaming others for why she took her life. The show dramatizes suicide and depression, focusing on blaming others instead of providing resources, including counselors and parents, to help. It tells a large teenage audience that suicide is the only way to escape pain and turns a serious situation into a source of entertainment. According to NPR, The show's popularity also resulted in a 28.9% increase in suicide among Americans between the ages of 10 to 17 after its release. In 2012, the movie Silver Linings Playbook was released. While I have to admit it was an entertaining movie, I don't believe that it accurately portrays bipolar disorder. In the movie, Bradley Cooper plays a man with bipolar disorder who's being released from a psychiatric hospital after beating the man he found his wife cheating with. The character refuses to take his medication and is reluctant to therapy. The film ends on a very happy note with a big kiss between the two main characters, suggesting that love conquers all and all you need is love, not medication and therapy, to overcome mental illness. As a person who has suffered with bipolar disorder, I know that medication and therapy are very important for the treatment of mental illness. Mental illness is something many people experience. How these illnesses are represented in the media affects our generation's understanding of it, and if not done right, makes it more difficult for people to reach out for help. Mental illness isn't as simple or one-dimensional as the media tends to portray it as. It's not something that can be easily fixed or suddenly disappear. Entertainment media that chooses to portray mental illness or mental conditions should take more effort into understanding what they are depicting to a potentially impressionable audience, including consulting with professionals and those who have experienced a mental disorder or use their platform to spread accurate information when discussing mental health. Outside of the media, there are other resources we can turn to, like the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Since so many of the target audience for TV shows and movies are young people, schools could take bigger steps in incorporating resources, counseling, and mental health education for students. Instead of depending solely on our TV shows and movies as our representation of what mental illness is supposed to look like, we need to take conscious action in communicating about mental health and learning how to support those who need